Okay, welcome to the Heartland Cycling Network, where we educate and elevate cycling in the Heartland. Today's show, we're going to have Eric Williams, who is a natural resource planner with the Papio NRD. Yeah. And Eric and I have known each other for a little while, and he's been very helpful in what I've done in the past, so to understand what's going on with the trail system within the Omaha, greater Omaha area. So Eric, how long have you been in your current role with the NRD?
Yeah, well, I'm glad to be here. I've been working at the NRD since the beginning of 2014. A little bit of background there. It's the Papio Missouri River Natural Resources District,
okay. But
that's a dramatically long government agency name, so usually people just say NRD.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, very good. Okay, are you a cyclist? I should ask that question.
Yeah, I am. Not quite as avid as some other people are, but I went out on Memorial Day with my family. I live in Dundee. My brother and his wife live in Benson, so we went out and did about 25 miles on the trail network that day. Cool. The only trouble is, anytime I go out riding, I usually end up stopping regularly to evaluate where are new potential trail connections. So I really got to try and turn that off when I ride for enjoyment. This does not work.
Yeah, sounds like you can't get away from work when you're out there riding.
That's right. That's right.
I know the feeling. So.
Yeah, but when you ride the trails, you get an opportunity to see where are some of those places that things are challenging. Are there any maintenance or operations issues that need to be addressed? Or are there places where new connections could be developed? And so by riding the trails, I learn a lot about, this is a great big hill that people might take to get between a couple of the trails. Is there a way we could help people route around to get between places a little more easily?
So you're sort of telling us a little bit about what you're doing with the NRD. And I take it there must be somewhat of a passion of yours. You sound really excited about that when you do that. Go out there and do some riding and say, hey, maybe we can make a trail connection here. So.
Yeah, absolutely. The NRD generally focuses on the wise conservation and protection of resources in our district. We cover all of Sarpy County, Douglas County, and then the next 4 counties up to the north, all the way up to South Dakota border. And so
really?
We have a pretty large area. Yeah, it's a public agency, people call it quasi-governmental sometime, but there's nothing quasi about it. It is a publicly elected board of directors, 11 directors, 10 of which come from the Omaha metro area in Douglas and Sarpy County, and then 1 represents those other 4 counties. So we do work over that entire area, focused on natural resources, primarily water and soil are the 2 that we generally work with. And that's kind of what led the NRD to focus on trail construction. In the metro area, we've been working on stormwater management for a few decades, and there's really only 2 things that can happen with water: not enough and too much.
Yeah, we had too much a couple of years ago.
That's right, that's right. Yeah, 2019 was much, much too much. And so in the management of water within the metro area, channels were constructed and designed in order to facilitate stormwater getting out of the Papio watershed, to make sure we don't end up with flooding, to reduce the risk of flooding.
Yeah.
So the construction of dams to help hold back some of that peak rain flow, and then the maintenance of the channels. And those channels are generally where the trail system in the Omaha area started.
Right.
The maintenance roads along the edge of the channel were constructed to allow the NRD to go out and do maintenance as necessary. Mm-hmm. And 99.9% of the time, no one is out there. There are not trucks. There's no maintenance activity necessary. And so in about the middle 80s, there was a decision that maybe we can let people use these maintenance roads as another beneficial use. And construct a trail. And so the Keystone Trail was the first trail that was constructed, and it was much more popular than people had originally expected, and it continued to expand out along the Little Papio Creek. Eventually that moved over to the Big Papio Creek and the Big Papio Trail, and the West Papio Creek and the West Papio Trail. So the basis of our trail network starts and follows the 3 main branches of the watershed from generally the northwest to the southeast. And we have about 130 miles of trails in the Omaha metro area now.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've ridden most of them.
Yeah.
I can't say I've ridden them all, but getting close to that point.
Yeah.
So I live out by the West Papio Trail, so I've ridden that a number of times. And on Memorial Day, that was one of the things I did with a friend. We rode from the trail end at Terminus, just south of Maple Street on the West Papio, down to Twin Creek, all the way up to Democracy Park on the Keystone, and then back again. Because he wanted to do a metric century.
Yeah, nice.
And that that's really a metric century, so that worked out very well. That's 62.4 miles or something like
sure.
that. So that was a good 4-hour ride, so that was fun.
Yeah, and it sounds like you might have had just a little bit of a gap in Millard on the West Papio, kind of the north section of the West Papio relative to the south section of the West Papio. But otherwise, it would have been entirely on the trails, right?
Yeah,
Great.
yeah. And, we just worked through that. I mean, basically, going through some sidewalks and navigating through the lumberyard district to hook up again with the trail at Q Street and Harry Anderson Boulevard.
Yeah,
or road or whatever it is.
Yeah, and that's a section I'm really familiar with. When I started at the NRD, that first month right away, we were moving into design of the West Papio Trail from 90th Street over to 96th and up to 108th Street. We built that project and opened it the next year, and then moved to the design from about 108th and Giles all the way up to about 132nd and Q.
Yeah.
So those two projects have been entirely designed and constructed since I've been at the NRD. Yeah. So I have a lot of familiarity with kind of the connections there and how those work in our community.
I know we've talked in the past too about maybe getting that connected all the way the north and south sections of the West Papio, and I know you have some plans for that, but what does that look like right now?
Sure. Yeah, you mentioned the north end of the trail. Let's start up there. You mentioned the north end is at Maple Street. Now, technically, the trail is also north of Maple Street.
Right.
Continues under 168th and up to the south side of Fort Street. That section was recently constructed. The NRD worked with the SID in that area to build that section and the bridge across to the west side of the creek there. But there is still that gap at West Maple Road.
Yeah.
We've done a conceptual investigation there to find out what would it take to build the trail from the north side of West Maple Road down under the south side and down by that commercial development. So we do have a pretty good idea of what that would mean. It's outside of the technical City of Omaha limits right now. And so it's challenging for the City of Omaha to be directly involved in that project. And the original development agreement in that area does ask the developer to build a portion of that trail. So we're trying to work with them to figure out what is the arrangement of the developer building the trail, the NRD participating, and the City of Omaha also being involved, and then eventually taking over the operations and maintenance. So that's kind of the north gap, generally the West Maple Road underpass. As you continue down, you come to about 137th and Millard Ave, and that's the other gap in the West Papio that you mentioned that you had to go around.
Yeah.
The Hobby Lobby parking lot over to 132nd and Q.
Yeah.
That section does have the missing piece there has a specific name that's referred to as the Millard Connection because it has been submitted for federal funding. And so it is planned for design and construction. We'll probably start the design toward the last half of this year. There have been a couple very significant stormwater management projects in that corridor that were identified during the conceptual study of that Millard Connection. They were moved out to individual projects on their own in collaboration with the Omaha Public Works Department. Those are in process now. So if you're at 132nd Street over that West Papio bridge, you can see a very large construction site. That needs to be completed before we can do the design of the trail to follow the creek from Harry Anderson under 132nd, under Q Street, and under Millard Ave.
Then you got to switch sides.
That's right. And so we'll probably come up, the conceptual recommended coming up on the left bank or the east side, and then going over the existing bridge at Millard Ave, and then back down by Hobby Lobby parking lot.
Probably have to widen that path a little bit.
Possibly. We'll take a look at that. The conceptual study just identified that, in theory, you can make it across on Millard Ave, kind of like the Big Papio Trail from Toll Park across the Center Street Bridge.
Right.
It's not a great connection.
Yeah.
And it is important. I think that demonstrates the focus of other infrastructure projects needing to consider the recreation and active transportation when they're constructed originally. So the West Center Street Bridge does not have a very enjoyable crossing over that Big Papio Creek.
Right.
The same thing at Millard Ave by Hobby Lobby. It's technically you can make it across. You're probably only one at a time. It's not a full trail width. And the railing and the fence are not really designed for bikes. It's designed to kind of keep people safe from the edge of the bridge.
I know if you had more than one person riding that area, it's like, okay, somebody's going to have to stop and wait.
Right, and so it's critical that when we build those other infrastructure projects, specifically bridges, that we incorporate that active transportation component into the other automobile infrastructure. Good example is Pacific Street over 680, where it was intentionally widened on the south side and a pedestrian-friendly fence was used. Now, Pacific Street doesn't have a great connection either east or west from that bridge. But the bridge is the kind of thing that's only built every few decades.
Right.
And so it's critical that when that is built, we incorporate that active transportation component
Yeah.
so that people can use that, and how they get to and from that big crossing over 680. That's kind of up to them.
So that was sort of in combination with the city of Omaha sort of
That's right.
planning about that, saying, you know, eventually we're going to take and do something with this. We're going to put some trails in
Right.
here and connect things.
Right, because from 680, you're just up the hill, so if you head just a little bit to the east, you come to the big Papio Trail down
Right.
there kind of by One Pacific Place.
Right.
So yeah, that's a connection that could be incorporated in the future. But even if that trail section were built, if the bridge at 680 had not been widened to incorporate the trail crossing, you'd be left with another one of those kind of narrow sidewalk
Yeah,
sections.
right.
And that's what we really need to avoid in the long-term planning of the entire system.
Yeah, yeah. And I know that it's great that the trails follow the creeks. I mean, there's plenty of mileage for people to ride and walk and enjoy the outdoors. But that tends to get you somewhat to go just north and south.
Right.
We're still struggling, at least I know in the Omaha area, going east and west. I know cyclists have found routes through neighborhoods to do that. I mean, even I have done that.
Sure.
So it would be nice that you know, the city of Omaha and the other cities, municipalities would obviously plan for connections and bike paths.
So the trail network following the creeks has an advantage that the water is always at the bottom of the valley, at the lowest spot.
Right.
And so if you follow the creek, you have a relatively flat corridor for that trail.
Right.
So that's good. But as you go from one creek valley over the hill to the next,
Yeah.
if you're going directly east and west on, say, Pacific Street,
Yeah.
you are going uphill and back downhill.
Right.
And so
Yeah.
the advantage of following the creek is that it's always at the bottom of the hill and it's nice
Yeah.
and flat. In a car, you can follow Pacific Street, and it's not any more challenging to go exactly on the compass east-west,
Right,
no problem.
right.
But on a bike,
Yeah.
you might see a 5,
Well,
10%
and
climb.
I've gone from the West Papio, the Big Papio to the West Papio on Blondo.
Yeah.
Because Blondo's pretty much a pretty wide path
Right.
until you get close to the Huntington Park area.
Right.
And then all of a sudden there's no connection anymore unless you ride into Huntington Park and then reconnect up with the trail.
So I do think that the City of Omaha Parks Department is working with the Public Works Department to extend that Blondo connection on the north side down to the West Papio Trail at about 168th Street, I think is where that's located. Maybe a little east of that, 160th Street maybe?
Yeah.
So I think that is in process, that there's some roadway work, and I believe that trail connection is going to be extended there.
Yeah,
So
because
that's
that all
in
goes down to
process.
just a plain two-lane road without
Yeah,
any
right,
shoulders. So
right.
it just becomes a little bit more of a challenge for people to ride to hook up back with the West Papio.
And again, I think that when the roadway improvements are made, that the trail is going to be incorporated with those roadway improvements. So as you're doing that transportation infrastructure, make sure you consider all users, not just people in cars, but also people walking, running, and riding bikes at the same time.
Right. So what other projects are on the close horizon within the 6 to 12 month time period?
Yeah, well, there's always a lot of stuff going, and it kind of comes in different phases. An existing project that's been out of commission for a while would be the Mopac Trail and the Lead Bridge over the Platte River, down by Highway 31 over towards South Bend.
Right.
That was damaged pretty badly in the flood in March of 2019. And we've already completed 3 different repair projects on the structure itself. There was debris lodged into the fence that needed to be removed. There was the fence and railing that needed to be removed from the bridge and then reconstructed. And then on the underside of the bridge, the ice breakers that protect the structure from ice in the river needed to be repaired as well.
Oh, okay, that's stuff that nobody would actually see outside of you guys when you do the inspection.
If you stand at the edge and look over, you can see down to those icebreaker
Yeah.
noses. They look like a nose sticking on the upstream side of the bridge.
Okay.
When the ice hits it, it breaks it in half so it doesn't damage the piers that are down
Yeah,
in the water.
okay.
So we did all 3 of those projects over the last couple of years. Right now we are in construction of the trail from the Highway 31 parking lot. It's about a half mile down the hill to the east end of the bridge
Right.
in Sarpy County. That's under construction right now, and we are planning to have that open for the 4th of July holiday.
Cool.
So
Very
yeah,
good.
about 1 month from now, that project should be open. We're in the process of planning a ribbon cutting activity.
Oh, good.
Probably
good.
on Saturday, July 3rd. So if
Yeah.
people are interested, they
I
can
know
come down.
I was at a club meeting last night, and we were talking about that project and whether or not that was actually going to happen.
Yep.
If you're going to have like a ribbon cutting, because we certainly would like to have a presence there.
Yep, absolutely. Be glad to have you. And Saturday, July 3rd is the planned date right now.
Okay.
It's a relatively simple project. The biggest challenge is from the flood, a lot of sand and debris was
Right.
left on the top of the trail surface.
Yeah.
So we've actually kind of realigned the property rights It's an easement for the trail with Western Sand and Gravel. So we've realigned the property rights, and we'll be moving the trail slightly, but it will be improved through this new construction that's going on right now.
Okay. Yeah, I rode down the Mopac last year, and of course, it's like all overgrown from there to the bridge, but it was still a nice ride.
Yeah, yeah. Technically, that was closed, by the way, but I'm glad you.
What, the Mopac itself, or?
Yeah, the trail down to the bridge is supposed to.
Well,
have been
down
closed.
to the bridge, I didn't get there. I mean,
Okay.
basically, I got to the sign, the trailhead, and sort of like a parking area, and I'm going, okay, it doesn't look like I can go any further, so we just headed back.
Yeah, okay, I'm
Back
glad to
to
hear that.
Springfield.
Because we do have people who do ride in sections where the trails are closed sometimes, and,
Yeah.
and that can be dangerous. And so
Yeah.
we encourage people that if there is signage, please follow the signage.
I know the
to stay
riders
safe.
that I have known that have gone across the river have usually gone over the bridge by Louisville.
Yeah, yeah, and that's worked okay, but don't worry, by the 4th of July, the lead bridge will be back open again.
That'll be great. That'll
Yeah.
be great.
So
Look
that's an
forward to
existing
that.
project that needs repair and will be back open again.
Yeah.
So kind of the next, if we're working backward through the process, projects that are under construction right now that will soon be open, the Western Douglas County Trail is a project out in Valley, and it will
okay.
connect from the Douglas County West schools. There's a couple schools on the west side of the street. There'll be a crossing at the street, and then there'll be a bridge over the UP railroad tracks, over the old highway, and landing down on the east side by the YMCA.
Okay.
It'll be a very prominent structure. It'll be a 2-span bridge, I think about 450 feet in total length, so much longer than most bridges around here, similar to
Okay.
the bridge by Creighton over the highway.
Okay.
Yeah, so that kind of a structure will be placed over the highway and the railroad tracks. That is under construction. Materials are on site now. The contractor will be out there starting next week. So that'll be under construction this year, and the contract is expected to be completed by the end of the year.
Okay, good, because I hate riding over railroad tracks.
Yeah, well, that'll really help, and that's another one of those kind of big hurdles that there really is kind of very little way to get over the railroad tracks. And so if you've got kids at school who want to go over to the fields or the pool at the YMCA and enjoy some of that recreation, it's really challenging to get there. But this bridge will make a really great connection, and then it connects. The trail extends south out of Valley down toward Mallard Lake, so people can make it from those houses up into town and over to the YMCA.
Okay.
So that's in construction now. Another project currently in construction is the North Omaha Trail.
Oh yeah, I heard about that one.
Yeah, recently in the World Herald, that was one of the 2 trails that was featured there. And the North Omaha Trail is being led by the City of Omaha with Spark CDI. It's a community development organization, and they're leading that project. The primary feature is that existing pedestrian bridge at Pratt Street over Highway 75. So the trail will follow along the highway corridor on 75 from about 24th and Lake, up on the backside of the highway corridor, over the existing bridge, north up to Sprague Street, over 30th and to about 31st and Sprague Street, to Druid Hill Elementary.
Okay.
And so that project is expected to be under construction this year as well.
Well, that's great.
Yeah, that's going to be a really great one. Again, using an existing feature and then expanding access by building the trail connections that incorporate that Pratt Street Bridge.
Yeah. And that's the nice thing about some of the new developments that are going on in the western part of the county, where they're putting in, the SIDs are putting in a trail system.
Right.
Obviously, it'll be nice when they all start getting interconnected and provide some alternative transportation, besides recreation, too.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, that's one of the biggest things that we've seen.
And I think that's something you'll see a lot more over the next 10 years or so, is that there's a pretty robust system of kind of high-capacity trails along the creeks, but connectivity to communities that are very close to the trails but have some of those barriers. I think that's something that we're focusing on, and I think some other public agencies are focusing on as well, so that people can get safely to the trail and then enjoy those long miles up and down the creek,
Right.
or make those connections from the trail east and west, as you said, to businesses, schools,
Right.
homes,
Right.
so they can use the trail for that active transportation component in addition to the recreation up and down the creek.
Yeah.
So-
When you said talk about high capacity, that's one of the things that I think we've noticed over the last year, is that there's been a lot more people using the trails, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's really excellent. One of the things that I know that I've been involved with is to take and actually improve what they call educating about trail etiquette.
Right.
So we're looking at different ways to try and get the word out. Okay, this is what cyclists should do. These are what pedestrians should do. And when we're riding on the roads, what should motorists be aware of? So we're trying to get that word out. Do you have any, I mean, right now what we've been doing is that you've been very helpful with the Bellevue Bicycle Club, for example, giving us maps that we've been distributing throughout various kiosks throughout the trail system and parks. And we've been sticking in this trail etiquette flyer, but I don't know if there's any other ideas that you may have that we could maybe expand that.
Yeah, so there's a kind of a commuter-based map, the Bicycle Omaha map, I think the title, I think that's the title, from 2017. And on the back side of that map, it did have some bike etiquette stuff incorporated into it. That map hasn't been reprinted since 2017, I don't think, but that was targeted at more of people who are not just on the trails, but people who also use streets for the transportation component. And so it included hand signals and some ways that bicycles encounter other people, so cars, people walking, running. So that information is really important. It was in that map. It's not included in the trails map, but I appreciate the insert that you've provided along with the trails map.
I know we've distributed that etiquette flyer at a number of local bike shops throughout the area as well. They already have maps that they're distributing, and we thought, is there a way to take and actually get this information out? Because we thought this is, it's a little bit of a promo for the club, but at the same time, it's really to tell people, especially all the new people that are out here, these are the hand signals. These are some of the things you should do. Just ringing a bell and announcing that you're passing on the left. Is one of the big things. And of course, motorists is one of the things that I may gripe about a little bit. And I'm a motorist too, but last year I happened to have a little spill because a motorist stopped in the crosswalk on Q Street, 144th. So to go around them and cut back onto the trail, I actually hit the curb a little bit and I was down on the concrete. And if it wasn't for my helmet, I would have had a concussion.
Yeah, good reminder, always wear that helmet.
It's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it.
Right. I recently had to buy a new helmet because mine was more than 5 years old. So I replaced it, and replacing a helmet that never got used in the entire 5 years feels a little bit weird, but it was absolutely a good reminder that I'm glad I never needed this. And I will gladly buy another one for the next 5 years.
It's cheap insurance no matter what you end up spending on it. And mine was one of the wave cell helmets, and it has a 1-year crash warranty. So it was damaged, and I took it in, and they replaced it.
Perfect. Yeah, that's great. So I mentioned the North Omaha Trail. Another project that's in that same area is the Beltline Trail. That's being led directly by the NRD. We're working with community members. We're in design right now. It follows the old railroad corridor from about Military at Hamilton, kind of northeast past Adams Park, and it meets the North Omaha Trail right at 31st and Sprague, and then we'll continue up to the Transit Center. The Omaha Metro Transit Center on 30th Street there. And so that'll be a great intermodal point of connectivity. People who are using the bus can come over to the trail network, follow the North Omaha Trail kind of south and east, follow the Beltline Trail south and west. And there's also the existing Paxton Boulevard Trail that follows directly west along the boulevard, the road, and reaches all the way over to Fontenelle Park. It used to be the golf course. So the idea is that 3 trails meet directly at that point of transit connectivity as well.
And I know some people that actually do take the bus. They have their bike, and they basically use the bus to get to work. And then they'll ride their bike back home. I mean, they work downtown, they live in Papillion, they live in other parts of Omaha, and it really is kind of a nice feature, a nice thing for people to do.
A couple other things coming up in the future. In that same story about the North Omaha Trail was the Platte River Bridge Trail. That's on the Highway 75 bridge between Bellevue and Plattsmouth. So it's another one of those major crossings that there is no physical way to make it from one side of the river to the other unless you have that trail connection.
And you just recently put out, let's say, a call for commentary on that. That was distributed throughout the cycling community within the Omaha area.
And we got several comments back. They were all supportive. And so we're going to take that input, incorporate it into our design documentation. We're moving forward with the environmental. We expect to have that design done by the end of the year. Hopefully we'll be looking at construction of that Platte River Bridge Trail on the existing Highway 75 bridge, hopefully starting that construction next year.
Well, has there been any questions that I didn't ask that I should have asked?
I mentioned the connectivity component, and we're doing a really neat thing right now for the future. It's the Neat Connectors. It's a series of 10 very short projects, mostly about a half mile or maybe even just a quarter mile, that bring neighborhoods down to the existing trail network. We're in the process of selecting a consultant for that one. That's going to be a really great set of projects. You'll hear about that probably throughout the rest of this year as we do that conceptual design. And that's, again, kind of a really important thing that we've been looking forward to, and we're glad to have it going now.
Well, we're going to enjoy spreading that news amongst the cycling community. And we're going to wrap it up for today. And like to see everybody come back on to the show later on and watch us. And this is Jeff Quant, and I just wanted to remind everybody to pedal on.